parking's metered, and it shouldn't be metered. I shouldn't have to pay, to park in downtown. You hear all different sorts of arguments. From our point of view, you have a quite ample number of spaces for the Franklin Street corridor, the way it's arrayed today. For the most part, there are certain sections of Franklin Street that aren't very well served by off-street parking. For the most part, you have Central and Northern part you have. Southern end of Franklin Street is not well served by off-street parking. Curbside parking, obviously, you want to try to wean off of as best you can when you want to create a walkable downtown setting where people are out and about walking the streets. Because if you make it too convenient for them to park in front of their favorite store, that's what they're going to do. And whenever they park in front of their favorite store, they go in that store and then they get right back out in the car and leave, rather than walking past other stores because they have to go to a central lot. So we see your issue as being a problem of you're treating people who park at curbside the same as people who use the parking lot. They're both metered the same charge. You should instead be incentivizing people to use the lots and disincentivizing them from parking at curbside. There are a lot of ways to do that, and we go into the report. I won't belabor it here, we'll never get done. But we also talk about things like smart parking systems, which give you the freedom to change on the fly how you want to treat parking, say for different holidays or events or for other reasons. And that could be a helpful thing for the town to go into as well. We also talk about enforcement, which we think is a significant issue for the way you incentivize and disincentivize the way people park in the neighborhood. Okay, on to the next one, please. We looked at your regional competitors because we think it's very important that you know what are the categories that are closed out to you that you cannot go into because they're already too well served in your region. And I'm not going to go into those here, but I'm sure you're all aware. There are certain categories, basic categories of family clothing, for example, you cannot go into in a downtown setting when you are so well surrounded by multiple shopping centers that offer national retailers, chains, franchise, sellers of clothing, shoes, those sorts of things. You can get into specialty items of clothing, which you do here, and you could do more of it. But the traditional standard things, the way the Jeanette shop type of things, you can't do that again. All right? If we move on. Next, I want to talk about a concept called street wall, because I think this is an opportunity for you that has been missed, and it's something you can pick up on now. Street wall is a term that architects use to describe a sense of enclosure that you get when you're in a downtown walkable shopping environment. And it regards the height of the buildings on either side of the corridor in relation to the width of the street. And architects say that the most comfortable form of enclosure that stimulates more people to feel good about walking in the corridor is a 1-to-1 ratio or better, meaning the height of the building should be at least as tall as the street is wide. Now, Franklin Street that we're looking at here is 45 feet wide, okay? And the sidewalks on the other side are about 10 feet wide, so really a total of 65 feet. But if we just consider the width of the street, 45 feet, that's 2 to 3 stories in height. And yet, on many of the blocks of Franklin Street, you get this kind of image where you'll see a number of one-story buildings that do not create the sense of street wall, do not give that degree of comfort, do not give you the impression that, oh, we should keep walking because there are more stores here. So you've got an opportunity there to do something that we call overbuild, but we'll talk about that when we get to recommendations. On the next one, please. Next, we're going to talk about gaps. Gaps are another issue here in the community that are a problem for retailers, and that is that if you have a space of 75 feet or more between stores in a downtown area, that can act as a barrier so that people will give up on the idea of browse shopping. They'll stop walking thinking that, oh, I've come to the end because there's a vacant lot or a group of homes, or maybe there's a blank wall, a concrete wall or a cinder block wall, something like that, with no windows, nothing to grab shop in, and they just decided that must be the end of it, so I think I'll stop. You have several places in the community where that occurs. I point out one of them to you here with this image. This is the Chestnut Street corridor between Passaic and Franklin Street. And what you have, it's kind of upside down in relation to geography, because the north side of Chestnut is on the bottom of the picture. We're looking in a southward direction. We've highlighted the south side in yellow because it's so unlike the north side. The north side has almost continuous shoulder-to-shoulder retail spaces with stores and a cafe, interesting places. Yes, it has a couple of breaks. If you look at it, you can see there's an off-street parking lot that kind of interrupts. There are a couple of driveways in there that interrupt the walking experience. But for the most part, you've got a good retail stretch on the north side of that block. On the south side, you don't have a single store. You've got government offices, you've got some nonprofit agencies, a private club, and large parking lots. And so that presents a gap that makes people think that maybe this isn't really a retail district, maybe I shouldn't be walking here. And we think that places like that in the community are things you'll want to address, and we talk about that in our recommendations too. Okay, so let's review what we've looked at for infrastructure. We discussed that. Too far. There you go, thanks. There's the checklist showing you all the categories of infrastructure we just discussed. They're checked off. And what are the main points? We have multiple corridors here. We think that the Franklin, Center Street, Chestnut Street group is your real downtown. We think that we see some design conflicts that could be resolved through a design standard here in town to bring storefronts and signage to a design harmony, not uniformity. You don't want monotony, but some kind of harmony. We think that there is maintenance and facade upgrades that are really needed in order to dress up the look of your downtown corridor and some of the other corridors. We think that sidewalks are too narrowly activated. We think that you've got a service-heavy retail mix. You need to begin recruiting vendors of goods that you can support here so that you can get a better balance. And you need to have more restaurants as well. We think you have an admirably low vacancy rate. Of course, that's a 2x story. It's great that you're such a popular community with businesses. It's not so good if you want to adjust your retail mix and you don't have vacant spaces to plug new retailers into. Makes it difficult. It means it's going to take more time to change your retail mix. You have many old buildings with the older store configuration. To fix that, it's going to require matching storefronts together, or redeveloping, or finding small boutique stores that fit into those older spaces. Access needs to be worked on. You need to be able to attract outsiders in and show them how to get there. Parking challenges need to be addressed, and we don't think there's big challenges. It's not like you have to build a parking deck. It means you need to show people where to park, and you have to encourage them to park in the lots, not the curbside. And then finally, you have to be aware of who your regional competition is, so you don't try to go head-to-head with them. And of course, as I said, we put all that in the report. Next, please. All right, we talked to many of your merchants, and we found out, and I'll really briefly summarize this, because again, you'll be able to read all of this in the report. But basically, merchants agreed that they really want more foot traffic. Those who are on Passaic or Washington or Chestnut wind up migrating to Franklin because they know they'll get more car traffic there. They all wish they could get more foot traffic. They just don't see it. So you need to do things to stimulate it. Next, they all talk about the lack of ample, convenient parking. Of course, very few of them will admit that they are part of the parking problem in many cases. Take up the curbside spaces, leaving their cars or their employees leaving their cars out there all day so that their customers can't get at them. Obviously, dichotomy there, but parking is a big issue for them. And the third, they're really uniformly interested in getting help with marketing. They struggle trying to figure out the right things to do for marketing. Very few of them are versed in internet, social media. They recognize that these are big opportunities. They don't know how to use them. They don't have the time to take to figure out how to do it. They really like some support with marketing, and they do think that the town should be doing something to market Nutley as a place to shop and dine. Okay, let's move on to the next slide. Oh, you did. Thanks. We talked to, many of the merchants that we talked to, and separately some of the non-merchants we talked to, commercial property owners, we found that they too were very concerned about parking for differing reasons. Some of them felt that there was too much of a burden on them to create off-street parking as part of being able to attract tenants in. Again, that's something you've recently addressed with your zoning changes, and I applaud you for that. Many of them complain that they invest in their buildings, but other owners don't. And so the value of their building is being brought down to the lowest common denominator, which is the guy down the block who doesn't fix up his building. So something needs to be done to help that problem. And then there was also a lot of comment about, not just from the owners, but also from merchants, about spreading public investment. The township has been great and investing in the retail infrastructure on Franklin Street, the lighting, the sidewalks, the signage, the developing the off-street parking. But many merchants and owners are going, gee, we wish we could get that kind of attention on some of these other streets. Now, obviously, that's, you are the ones who are charged with the responsibility of deciding where do we put our limited investments, how do we do this, and where can we put our investments to make the biggest buck. And clearly, Franklin Street, it was the great place, the obvious place to start. The question is, will you want to go beyond that? And if so, where would you want to do it? And we can give you some recommendations on that. As I've already been suggesting, we think that the Center Street and Chestnut Street grid connections with Franklin are a natural extension of the walkable downtown area, so that they too, might be a logical place to go with that. Next. Okay, so we talked with stakeholders. Most of them we met with right here in this chamber. There were nearly 2 dozen that we talked to, and many of you were among them. Thank you. And from them, we learned a number of things, but I'll focus on just a few. First, there is an almost unanimous sense that Nutley should be a destination for outsiders, that it shouldn't just have commerce designed to benefit its residents, that it should be a place where outsiders want to come in, shop, dine, spend some time, spend their money, enjoy the events that you put on, and then leave. Because you have a charming town, you have a wonderful arrangement, the good architectural bones that make you naturally set up to be that sort of town. And people seem to agree, like osmosis, that yeah, that's who we should be. We've got the great parks, we also want a great downtown that everybody wants to be in. In fact, many people liken it to Montclair. We want to be like Montclair. Everybody goes there. Why shouldn't they come here? We're wonderful town. So that was the dominant theme I heard from the stakeholders. Also, as we asked, what's your vision for the future? What would you like to see here if this were your ideal? The common response that we heard was lots more stores, places where I can shop, more restaurants. I want more dining choice. I like the restaurants here, but I'd like even more. I'd like to have a great dining opportunity here. And again, better overall mix, more variety, less concentration of a handful of categories, more variety, lots of categories. Okay, next. Okay, the big thing was the survey that we then took of the community. And boy, did the community respond in a big way. This was one of the best. This was the second best. I almost hate to put it that way. It's just not fair. I mean, this was the best response that we ever got in any community that didn't also have a college in it. Okay? The only other town that did it better was Little Glassboro with Rowan University, because all the students of Rowan University got emails saying, you know, take the survey, and damn if they all did. So we had over 3,000 responses there. But you guys more than doubled the next nearest contender. Nutley was just fantastic, a terrific outpouring. 2,423 responses. That means with a confidence level of 95%, which is what we have in this data at that level, you have a margin of error of only 2.1%. Now, any major retailer will tell you that they only look at survey data if it has a margin of error of no more than 5%. Then they feel comfortable with it. You blew that away. 5% is achieved with 400 responses. So you're in great territory. In fact, not only is it reliable data, we were able to slice and dice it into separate categories. So many people responded, we were able to divide them up into different categories. People who shop here regularly, people who don't shop here, people who are residents, people who are not residents. So we were able to learn some interesting things that way. So let's move on. We'll tell you what they were. First off, we learned what your trade area is. That is the geographic space from which the vast majority, and for our review, 70% or more of your shoppers come from. As it turns out, 94% of the people who took the survey hail from Nutley. So your trade area today is the geographic area of this township, Nutley Township. We've shown you a map with the radii at 3 miles from the center of town, and the larger ring is 5 miles from the center of town. We believe that your true trade area, what you could do easily with marketing and a concentrated effort, would be a 5-mile wide trade area. And we'll get into the difference as we go through these next slides. But you'll see it's a huge difference. It would mean a world of difference to your retailers. Next, please. Okay, let's talk about how well you do with shopping. We asked shoppers how often, we asked the people who took the survey, how often do they shop here, and versus how often do they shop elsewhere, and how much do they spend per shopping trip. They told us, on average, it was 1.9 visits per month that they'll make here in Nutley versus almost 6 visits per month somewhere else. They leave Nutley to do the rest of their shopping. In terms of how much they spend on those visits, it's $23 on average on the one, per visit when they're here in Nutley versus $75 on average when they shop elsewhere. What that means is you're picking up less than 10% of the total amount that your own residents are spending on retail goods and services. All right? Think about that for a minute. You're just getting 9% of everything that your residents spend when they buy retail goods and services. That's a huge loss. That's incredible leakage. 91% of the dollars are going out of town. Now, we also learned from the survey that there were people who said they never shop here. These were classified as non-shoppers. Now, non-shoppers was anybody who shops here less than once a month. But among those non-shoppers, 61% told us they never, ever shop here. And these are Nutley residents. Now, I mentioned to you the 5-mile radius. If we were able to, below your trade area, start to attract people from just 5 miles away, you would be reaching a much larger audience. You know that here in Nutley, we have 28,878 residents as of the last census. Within a 5-mile radius, there are 657,000 residents. And if we could attract them, forget that. If we could just attract capture a greater share of what your Nutley residents are spending outside, you'd pick up another $58 million a year for your merchants. We'll later talk about what you can get out of the 5-mile radius in another slide when we get to that. Let's move on to dining. You guys do a much